What's up, everyone? We are back. It is Thursday, January 11th. Yesterday was my birthday. I am alive for another year, and I'm going to make 2024 the best year of my life. I can promise you that. For anyone that's joining, welcome. I have this streaming on my LinkedIn. I have this streaming on X. I have this streaming on YouTube. I am Mr. Worldwide. I have my good friend Andy here from Dragon 360. Andy, welcome to the show, and I'll let you introduce yourself, and then we'll talk about what we're going to be doing today.
Well, happy birthday, first and foremost.
Thank you.
Do you want to reveal your age or no?
Yeah, 37. It was funny because James actually texted me, and he's like, I thought you were a lot younger than 37. And I was like, if I shave this, I look like I'm about 10. So,
all right, so you're a year behind me. You're slowly catching up at some point. So,
exactly.
No, I mean, I'm looking forward to today's episode for sure, because I think it's going to open up a lot of opportunities. Kind of going back to the video that I released yesterday, like we've helped out 5 brands so far on this show. And as the calendar flips to 24, we both agree that we can do more and help out a lot more people kind of in this show and create better campaigns that are going to drive the needle this year. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And yeah, we're excited for it. And for everyone that's listening, People First Playbook, this is season 1. We've been doing a lot of different campaigns where we do a live integrated revenue campaign in 30 minutes. We realize that's very tricky. Hey, Jeff, the yo, I love it. But we wanted to take this episode to be able to kind of do an AMA. And so we wanted to break down like, hey, people have questions. It's 2024. The economy is still crap. We can all agree to that. So if you do have questions, drop them in the chat. Nothing is off limits. If you want to learn about paid or how to build an audience or LinkedIn or really anything, Andy and I bring very, complementary skill sets to the table, but it all ties back to a people first mindset at the end of the day. So Andy, I'll toss it over to you. I don't know if you have any questions that have already come in. I'll monitor the chat here. I have a few that have come in as well to me, but I'll kick it to you, see if you have any first.
Yeah, I think one that's a good kickoff is one I got yesterday as a DM. Basically, like they've seen our show pop up a couple times in their feed, and they keep wondering, what the hell does People First even mean? And I think there's a lot of competing thought processes that go into that, especially in the vein of like, well, is People First also customer centric? What's the difference? Are they the same? Things like that. So, I mean, from your perspective, Nick, like how would you define People First? And also like, is it customer centric or is that something different?
It's a really good question. So I think like when I think of People First, I think it's, create, capture, and convert demand at all parts of the revenue system, but it's putting people at the center of every interaction and experience. And so when you think about People First, I mean, most people have been doing this or a version of this for probably years. They just never really called it a People First, go to market or whatever it is. But like even your local shops in your city or town are probably doing variations of this. When you're moving from a company first mindset, company first is very transactional. They care about the bottom line. They care about themselves. They don't care about putting their customers, both, I guess, and the people internally and externally at the center of everything. And so when you start to switch to this mindset, I think it is very much about the customer. And I think it's figuring out, hey, how can I put them, both your external customers, but then your internal people at the center of every interaction and experience. So I would say it is very much related. And I think it's something that if you're not, I guess, customer first, you're missing out big time.
So I feel like customer first gives it a skew towards customer service in so many respects. I mean, on the marketing side of things, it's also like, there's a whole customer marketing aspect of things. There's life cycles, things like that. And I feel like People First is something bigger than that. And you kind of touched on it before because it involves not just customers, it involves your employees. It's about conceptually, obviously, putting people first. But I think when you actually look at the processes that go into that, it's about peeling off the layers of all of the BS that marketing has become over the years and really understanding like who are the people that we're trying to engage with? Who are the customers that we want to attract? It's about understanding your ICP, but it's about 10 layers beneath that. Like, who are these individuals? What do they care about? Like, what are they challenged with? And not just saving time and money and all the other BS kind of monikers that go out there, especially in B2B, but like, what is going to actually impact them personally and professionally? Because when you look under the hood and you understand those individuals as people, then you can scale that up to understand, okay, these are the stakeholders in an organization. Well, what does the organization care about, and how do those stakeholders roll up to that? And it puts into motion so many other avenues and ways in which you go to market, develop a strategy, but also the channels that roll into that strategy, whether that's paid, community, influencers, things like that. It's just an entire ethos and mentality that goes into your marketing that is well beyond customer centric, product led growth, any of the other, motions that you can throw into the mix, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a definitely a big believer of that too. And I feel like you kind of, I don't know, I just feel like there's such a lack. Maybe it's not a full lack of education, but I feel like there is a lack of education to a certain degree over a lot of these different things. People just use a lot of these words interchangeably
Yeah.
when they probably shouldn't, but like no one's educating on why they should or why they shouldn't, which is again why we're huge believers of like people first. And there's a huge amount of education that needs to go into this entire people first mindset, because people are like, all right, people first, yeah, it makes sense, just put people at the center of everything. But one of the questions I got, which actually kind of set us up very nicely, which we didn't do this on purpose, was how do you actually get started? My good friend Pete, who he's brand new VP of marketing over at Path Factory, shout out to Pete. He was like, all right, listen, I'm bought in. I understand the people aspect of it, but like, how do I get started? He's in a brand new role. He's about a week and a half in. So there's really, in Andy, I'll kind of go through like my 8 steps, and then anything that you want to add, feel
Mhm.
free to add beyond that. But if you're going to get started, and this is just 8 steps to get started from a people first go to market standpoint, the first thing that you have to do is create your story. So what do I believe in? Why do I believe in it? It's having a belief system ultimately. Second piece is talk to your ideal buyers. The amount of marketers that I talk to that aren't actually talking to their ICP is mind blowing. And like, I don't know, maybe it's just because I've always been a revenue focused marketer, but I've always talked to customers. I've always talked to prospects, and not just like, hey, once every quarter. Like I was on regular calls weekly. So I think it's talking to your ideal buyers. Number 3 is really using feedback to identify who your story resonates with, because you're telling your story, you're getting their feedback, but who, based on their feedback, is your story going to resonate with? Um, Once you figure out that piece, you're defining a set of principles, which is you're going to add to your point of view. So it's like, all right, great. For us at TAC, like we have a very set, strict principles that we believe people first falls into. For whatever you're trying to build for your company, you should do something similar. Now, great. You have the principles, you have the belief system, you have all these things. You need to build an asset. So maybe it's an event, maybe it's content, maybe it's product related, but the catalyst for distribution and audience building is going to be this asset. And now if you're just starting out, again, like, I don't know, maybe you're a seed stage company, maybe you're a series A. I know Path Factory is a little bit bigger, but this is for other people listening as well. You have to figure out how to find a partner. And it doesn't have to be one partner. It could be, but you might have multiple partners, because the power of distribution through amplification of everything that you can do with a partner, which is also why no one should go to market alone, is amazing. 7th piece, and this is something that I didn't always do. I wanted to, but I just couldn't figure out how to do it, was build an email list. So you got to create ways for people to subscribe. So it's like, all right, great. You're starting to build an email list because we know we can't rely on social media channels these days. Number 8 is you're going to amplify that asset. You've built an email list. You've got the power. You're going to distribute that strategically. Now you're amplifying it across micro content, social media, blog posts, short form, long form, all these different things. So that will get you to step 8. But I think it's important to know that you always build an audience first, and you do this before you launch a product, or I guess really anything. I mean, even creators, they always say build an audience first before you start creating content. Some people believe in that, some people don't. But I would say these are the 8 things that I think you need to get started to be successful today. Andy, what about yourself?
I think the one thing that there's a couple things there. I think one of the things that I want to talk about real quick is like that asset perspective, because I feel like you don't want to you don't want to bite off more than you can chew, but relying on a single asset to determine whether or not you're speaking the right language and the research that you've done up to that point is validated feels like you could be setting yourself up for failure.
Hmm.
And I think it also depends on what that asset is. If it's a roundtable, if it's creating a conversation where you do further validation, I feel like that's a little stronger than some piece of content, whether it's an infographic, webinar, etc., that you're going to market with. I do think you need a more well-rounded approach to your content strategy. And when we think about content, we also need to think about and move beyond this concept of, yeah, I'm going to create infographics, I'm going to create this, this, and this. Like, that's not content anymore. Content is anything and everything that's in market on behalf of you and your brand and the people that you're engaging with. Everything from snackable videos that come out of shows such as this, all the way through to your demos, your trials, everything that relates to that. So I think when you look at that customer journey and you start to think about, okay, validating who your ICP is, but also understanding those pain points, those passions, and aligning that to the journey. Like, you don't want to go for 10 to 15 things out in market at once, but I do think you need to, kind of aim for 4 to 5, because it's got to hit at different points of that journey to make sure that you're fulfilling not just what your audience is being built for, but look, you can't be screwing around too long to generate revenue. That's got to be pumped back into the system.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic additions, honestly. Can I so I had another question that came in, and I feel like I'm curious, and it kind of pivots a little bit away from this, but because of what you all do at Dragon 360, I'm curious on your thoughts here, because one of the questions I get asked a lot is like, is LinkedIn not gamifying the system, but like really relying more on like ads? And like, again, I know nothing. I ran paid for a short period of time. I am a dummy when it comes to paid. You can ask James, you can ask a lot of people. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to learn, but I don't seem to be getting any better. And one of the questions that I got that I'm actually curious about myself is around like thought leader ads on LinkedIn specifically. So I guess there's a few pieces of this. So one, who should be using thought leader ads? And then we had a question come in too, which we can, thank you, James. We had another question coming through, but let me finish my thought first. Who should be using thought leader ads? What's the best way to use them that you've seen so far, both from like your own just use case and just even other clients? And three, like what's a typical, I don't know, budget or something? Because I told James, I said, listen, I want to spend like $500 a month, and he's like, yeah, you're basically wasting money. So I'm curious what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, I mean, you got to pony up to play at this point in pretty much any channel. I think it starts with going back to that people first mentality and answering your question, Nick. Like, first and foremost, who is your audience, and is your audience active enough on LinkedIn for this to even be a worthwhile channel for you? Because if we're talking about, IT leaders or cybersecurity experts or something like that, are they active enough on LinkedIn? A great kind of hack for doing that is, if you have Sales Navigator, like, log into that, add your ICP details, and basically toggle on like what were their activities over the last 30 or 90 days. If your TAM is like 80,000, but you only have 1,000 that are like posting or active in some capacity over the last 90 days, well, sure as hell, you probably don't have enough audience active enough on LinkedIn for it to be a worthwhile channel. But that being said, let's assume that it is active enough that thought leader ads can make an impact. What I have found is authenticity makes a hell of a difference at the end of the day. And using videos, using snackable content, carousels were going to go away. You can still kind of fudge it with document uploads and things like that. But giving away value in some capacity outside of just a written post tends to do a lot better than just boosting essentially what you're putting out there as a written post. But I think the other thing too that, we've talked about back and forth with James in there as well, is like really fine tuning who your audience is. Like, you can't just go in there and be like, yeah, I want to be in front of all B2B SaaS leaders. Like, that is not a niche market. That's not going to move the needle, especially, finite budget at the end of the day. So I do think that worthwhile pilot experiment is,
Mm.
probably somewhere in like that 3 to 5K range over the course of maybe 30 to 60 days. Like you don't have to blow it all at once,
Yeah.
but you also have to balance it against who your audience is and what is the impact that you're trying to make with them, right? Are you trying to create demand? Or you're just trying to get, the Dragon 360, your name out there? Are you trying to build your own personal brand? And then also going back to that, like, what is the frequency in which you are creating good content that you can put money behind? Because you don't just want to have one or two single thought leader ads out there and saturate and stale the market. You need to have consistency in frequency of posting. You need to have a little bit of diversification within your ad portfolio. But honestly, when we look at like the metrics, the click-through rates are well above what you would get when you put out content as the brand and put money behind it
Hmm.
as, a sponsored post ad or anything
Yep.
like that.
Interesting. And again, maybe it's just my lack of education around it, but like, I don't know. Is there like, I feel like you guys should put together like some type of like, I was gonna say like course or like sheet or something. I don't know. One thing I am seeing is like you talked about carousels. Like I'm seeing more people post cheat sheets,
Mhm.
infographics, like those types of things. And funny enough, I did talk to someone that had 100,000 followers on LinkedIn, and we were talking. And he was telling me, he was like, "Listen, he's like." LinkedIn, the way that LinkedIn works now is it used to just show your content to a small subset of your first degree connections. If they engaged with it, it would go to your second and third degree connections. But now what happened based on when the algorithm shifted back in September was it's very much focused on the LinkedIn algorithm reads it first. And if it's not delivering value, it's not going to show it, which is why everyone has probably seen a massive drop off. I didn't know this, but like I was shown proof that it actually is the case. And so LinkedIn themselves is prioritizing learning, development. And if you can showcase that, then it's going to start to show it regardless first degree, second degree, third degree connection. It's going to show it to a small subset of all three of those and then continue to build it from there.
How do you
Um,
how do you quantify value? Like, what is the objectivity behind defining what valuable content is and isn't?
Well, I think that's part of the issue. The LinkedIn algorithm determines what that is, and no one knows what it is because unlike X and others, like they don't publicly share that information.
Mhm.
So, but the reason being, you're seeing less and less carousels. I'm sure you've seen it as well,
Yeah.
and you're seeing probably more of these cheat sheets, like one-page infographics, because that's how LinkedIn is determining. Hey, look, this person's actually trying to deliver value and who knows how long this is going to last? It might last another quarter or another month. I don't know. But I'm going to be testing it out myself. I have a lot of content that's coming out that every single piece goes along with a cheat sheet, an infographic. And when you use a cheat sheet or infographic and you have a decent sized audience, and I've seen this multiple times now because I was shown proof on like the back end, it gives you between a 4x and an 8x increase over just a regular text post. That even though you might be delivering a ton of value in that like text post, you get way more if you add that like graphic to it, which is interesting.
See, I think what this is proving though is the need, just like stocks and everything else in your life, you need to diversify your channel mix. Same thing goes for paid media, right? You don't want to be a one trick pony because your audience is going to differ. It's going to move. It's going to attach itself to different communities and areas of digital or wherever they hang out online.
Yeah.
And they're going to consume content differently on each of those platforms.
Yep.
So that's always been my rebuttal of going so heavy and exclusive on LinkedIn as like the channel and tactic,
Yeah.
because what happens if the algorithm changes? What happens if your audience changes? What
Yep.
happens if, they start to trend towards a younger age because the older crowd of senior leadership is starting to retire. And now, that audience doesn't hang out on LinkedIn. They hang out on TikTok. They hang out on other emerging social platforms and they consume content in a very different way than the buyer of yesterday. And that's why like the innovation and the constant testing and the diversification and all that, going back to like what I was saying before about having several assets when you're putting a people first strategy into motion rather than just a single one, is so important because it hedges your bets, which marketing is a gamble every single day, no matter how you look at it.
100%. Well, and I think that's like the other piece too. I mean, we all know like the goal of audience development is to ultimately move it to an email list. And I mean, I've seen massive drop offs. I used to be able to drive 1 million impressions on my stuff every month, and I actually just checked. For the last 90 days, I did about 500K, which still isn't bad. I mean, some people might be like, oh, 500K, like, why are you complaining? But when you go from 500K over 90 days, which would have been 3 million, like, that's a sizable drop. But what's interesting is the engagement has kind of gone through the roof. So I'm seeing anywhere from like a 3 to 8% engagement each post. And before it used to be like 1 to 2%. So engagement is up, impressions are down. The other stuff fluctuates a little bit, but like before, I knew if I posted like a post and it got 100 reactions and maybe 50 comments, that would be a 30,000 view post. Now that same exact output is going to give you maybe 3,000 impressions, at least for me, which is why I've kind of devalued the impressions. And going back, and then we'll answer the question from Alex. The person I was talking to about like LinkedIn, and again, like they've got 100,000 followers. They've been doing this for years. I've known them for about 3 years. They said you have to treat LinkedIn as a game. And people are going to be like, well, no, it's you're there to build authentic relationships. Yeah, that's great. You should be doing that. But the algorithm and like just the platform as a whole, you have to treat it as a game. You want to win the game, right? And so the person I was talking to was like, listen, I don't care if Joe Blow doesn't like my content. I'm not writing for them. I'm writing for a very specific ICP that I know if I can play the game, more people are going to see my content, which is going to attract that ICP, which is going to be more business for me. And I mean, it makes complete sense. And, you know, people say don't write for the algorithm, but when you're a business owner, and you're relying on it, like, yeah, you should absolutely deliver value, but you should still play the game. And Justin Welsh even talks about this, like playing like LinkedIn as a game. And so I'm now changing my mindset, and a lot that I come out with in February is very much going to be playing the game. And I'm still there to build authentic relationships. I'm still there to contribute to the community. I'm still there like to use this as like my tribe. But for the platform, I want to play it like a game versus just like, hey, I'm just here living life, whatever. And so we'll see how it goes.
All right.
So, but let's answer Alex's question here. So it looks like, is there such a thing as ICP unless you are in e-commerce, B2B, or B2C? Every industry is going to be different.
So you, as a business, you always have an ideal set of customers, regardless of what industry you are in or what like macro category you sit in. Even if you're a janitorial service, right? Your staff and your company is going to cater and need to cater to certain types of individual companies or accounts, because that's how you're going to build up your revenue, right? You can expand out of there, you can add other offerings, you can add other categories, but your product market fit is that concept lives across any single business. It's not just a B2B thing. Although I can understand where this kind of question and thought process is coming from, because all you hear when you say ICP is an automatic kind of synonymous relationship to B2B.
Yeah.
And that's not the case, because B2C, fashion, things like that, they just talk in different terms. Mm-hmm. But it is the same concept at the end of the day. Just the language is different.
Yeah. I agree with you spot on. I mean, I see this kind of gets into like a messier, but like so many companies in B2B in every industry is completely different. But so many people focus on personas. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, like and Andy, I know we've talked about this before, but like I just think a lot of the work that goes into persona stuff, like I don't need to know that Karen has a cat or a lizard. She's 50 and lives by herself. Like that, what good is that going to do me? Like I want to know where Karen hangs out, mm-hmm. what circle she's running in, what are her pain points. And like a lot of times you're hiring like these crazy persona contractors and consultants that charge you a ton of money that like build this stuff out, and like half the time it doesn't get used, because I've worked in B2B companies where we've hired those people and it doesn't get used. So I don't know, that's just a random rant for that.
Well, no, I mean, it goes back to what I was saying before about needing a people first strategy digs 10 layers deeper than
Yeah.
the surface level,
Yep.
right? It goes, I mean, forget like the cat lady Karen moniker basically for this one for a second, but like it's not just, what are they pained with and where do they hang out, but like what do they consume? Why do they consume it? How do they consume it? When do they consume it?
Yep.
Right? Are they a 9 to 5er that is so task oriented because they need to get crap done during the day and then they just go home and they tune out because it's a 9 to 5 job?
Yep.
Or are they in a leadership position that they have those same constraints from a bandwidth perspective, but when the day is over, whenever that is, or before the day starts, whenever that is, are they actively listening to content? For example, I walk pretty much every morning, give or take, and that's when I listen to podcasts. That's when I consume content. When I am in the office or on the job, if you want to call it such, like my attention is more towards our customers. It's more towards different things related to the agency. Doesn't mean I don't consume different content, but like I am more likely to consume different content that's going to resonate with me as a potential buyer outside of my normal work hours. And I think many buyers out there are of a similar mindset. Like same thing goes back to like email marketing. When are you going to actually make an impact? It's not going to be at 10 a.m. when they are about to run into a meeting with the CMO or something like that. Like unless you are so timely and intent driven and intent laden with your research that you are hitting them at the perfect time, it's just not going to happen. So it is about, I don't want to beat the horse here, but it's about diversifying that thought process, those assets, but also doing your due diligence and research to create personas that are more meaningful and more people oriented than just rolling something up into something, that you can slap a sticker on and say, yeah, these are our 5 personas.
Yep. Absolutely. I have another thing that was shared with me. I know I don't know how long you want to go, but I think this is an interesting piece that ties into people first. And I'm curious because I'm 100% all in on this. And so someone sent me this. It was actually this morning. It's about the creator economy. So I'm very, very bullish on the creator economy. I think it's a fantastic people first example. So this says, and I'm curious on your thoughts on what you think about it. Projections show that in 2027, 50.9% of the US workforce will be freelancing. That's a crazy number, first off. Then it says the creator economy is expected to double in size to $480 billion. The gray area, the vast in between of the black and white notions of stay at home and working, is officially booming. And this person says it's time to accept a more fluid narrative between work and life. So, lot to unpack there. I'm curious, like, what your thoughts are, because I think it all plays into like this people first mindset.
So I think there's a cultural aspect that can't be ignored here either, because forget like creator economy and everything to do with that for a second. But if you just compare the US against Europe from a cultural perspective, work-life balance, Europe has always been light years ahead of us when it comes to looking at that. And the US is very different. Now, is the US just catching up to that and we're all going in this path together? I don't know. I think the other thing too is like when you talk about $480 billion of monetary revenue, I guess, associated with creators, like what is, this is rhetorical, obviously, but like what is the amount of revenue that goes to the 10% or the 1%ers of that creator economy versus everybody else? The Kardashians, the LeBrons, the ones that can charge an arm and a leg and bank all kinds of money because they have the audience and everything else associated with them, versus the other 90 to 95% that is more niche and probably more impactful at the end of the day when it comes to B2B. So I definitely see it, but I think it does, we go back to like Alex's questions around like ICP. This is one where I definitely feel it's very industry dependent. And who you trust, how they articulate things, and how they receive information is a huge, game changer and variable of whether creatorship and creator economy impacts your specific market.
100%. I'm getting a few texts right now. So I got a text from my friend Alex Cox, and it wouldn't let him ask this question. He's listening right now. So hey, Alex. So he said, Something I want to ask you is why do we not see many marketers who have a strong social presence who have scaled companies to 1 billion plus in revenue? I feel like even the ones who even do 500 million plus aren't posting out on socials much. Any thoughts to why that is? Um,
I'll jump in here real quick.
okay.
This goes back to where your audience hangs out, in my opinion,
Mm,
because even when I look at our enterprise customers,
yeah.
and enterprise is, we'll say typically like 500 million plus, but for the purpose of this conversation, let's shy it down to like 150 million plus, give or take.
Mhm.
They do not hang out on LinkedIn. They do not have the time to hang out on LinkedIn. They might go on here and there, but I can guarantee you that most of the content that we put out is rarely seen by our enterprise customers because they just don't hang out there. They do things differently. You have to engage with them in different ways. And that's why I think, the social heavy presences, there's a difference there as far as scalability is concerned when it comes to revenue.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100%. Well, I was going to say too, and I mean, I've known some people that have worked for enterprise companies. I've never worked for an enterprise company, but they're just like, listen, I'm too busy doing work than to care about, posting on LinkedIn. And it's interesting. You see a lot, most people that you see posting on LinkedIn either run their own business or like they're marketers at like not always earlier stage companies, but like those earlier stage companies are trying to grow their brand awareness, which is why you see them talking a lot on LinkedIn, which is even myself. Like I worked for Alice. I drove $2 million in pipeline while I was there because they were an early stage company. They're looking to drive revenue. A lot of these enterprise clients, like, I mean, they have like referral things in place, word of mouth, like their flywheel's already operating and like they've got such a massive team. We're helping an enterprise client right now build out a community ecosystem. And I can tell you that the team of about 30 people that we're working with, maybe two of them post on LinkedIn. The rest of them just like, I just don't have time for this. So I think that's definitely a big piece of it.
Great product, great market fit, and relationship driven, right? That's how you get to that scale, right? You
Mhm.
have to sell awesome stuff. You have to do great work and great service. You have to build a customer audience, right? That is loyal. But to scale, like you talk about people first, it is relationship driven at that point. That's what gets you to the next tier and
Yeah,
beyond.
100%. Honestly, yeah, I mean, I know we're over time, but I feel like this was like I don't know. I'm getting more messages, and who knows? Maybe we should do like a part two of this. I know you've got other
Mhm.
messages, um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you have any final thoughts?
Let's do a part two. What the
Yeah,
hell?
I
You
think
got you got questions. I got questions.
yeah, I don't know. I love these AMAs because it's so chill. Like we just get to hang out and like talk shop and like there's no, scriptedness. Like we literally didn't write anything down.
Mhm.
We're just here hanging out, having a good time with everyone that's listening. And it seems like there is a good amount of people listening because I'm getting messages left and right. And I should have turned off my notifications, but I didn't. So here we are. But thank you all for joining. Honestly, we're incredibly grateful. We're going to do a part two because we have more questions that were submitted. If you have, thank you, John T, for that piece there. If you have questions that you want answered, shoot me or Andy a LinkedIn DM. Um, Literally nothing is off the table. We both have been in the tech world for a while. We know stuff. Andy knows a lot more than I do, which is why he's making big money. And we would love to answer your questions. And if you didn't get it answered today, like I said, DM us. We won't bite. We will absolutely do a part two of this. And who knows, we might even do a part three if it's that popular. But we appreciate you all spending some time with us. We're incredibly grateful. You could have spent your time anywhere, but you spent it with Andy and I. So thank you. And we'll catch y'all on the next one.
Yep. See you guys.